Welcome everybody to the May meeting. I had to think about that. The May meeting for 2023. And man, is this a meeting to have. I cannot wait for this one. So before we get started talking about Adobe Firefly with three amazing people from Adobe, DJ, do we have any announcements? Anything we need to promote?
I don't think so.
We just had NAB.
Yeah.
Cine Gear, if you're on the production side of things, Cine Gear is like 2 weeks away. I'll be up there on Friday for that. So up in LA at the Paramount lot. And then I already got my email from Max.
Yep, got my email from Max. There's that. Yeah.
So yeah, so if you want to, I guess you can't really do much more early bird than now for Max, because it's in a mid-October, I think.
Mid-October, yeah.
So yeah, so sign up for Max. We'll plenty of time to promote that. And then I think too, over the summer, we're going to do like a social. So yeah, we'll have another night of getting together. If you're local to San Diego, we'll do another night of getting together to hang out, have a beer or two, have some food, just kind of get to know each other face to face. And
typically our July meeting.
Yep, July meeting should be around then. And the last thing I'll say is we are still working on finding a space to have in-person meetings again. Man, the pandemic just killed so much good locations for us because of staffing and things like that. And so it's made it really, really hard to find a new venue. So, so Karen from the Austin User Group is saying June 8th, 2023 meeting at Austin User Group will feature demonstrations of, hold on, let me read this whole thing here. Wow, that's a lot. Okay, so I'm not going to read that whole thing, but it's going to be a really good presentation. You should go into the chat and read what Karen is posting there, because I can't read all that right now. So yeah, it's a lot of good stuff. So check out Karen's meeting. All right, well, if there is no other announcements, I'm going to go ahead and get this started, and I'm going to turn it over to Karina, who is from Adobe and who is an awesome person. And so if we were in person, we would stand up and give her a big round of applause for helping organize this meeting, which was really on kind of short notice. But she did an amazing job of getting two great presenters, and she's going to tell us all about Adobe Firefly. For those of you who don't know what Firefly is, hang tight. You're going to hear all about it, but it is part of the new AI tool set that Adobe has, and it is kind of game-changing stuff. And I know one thing we should say. If you haven't seen the new beta version of Photoshop and the AI stuff in that, you need to check that out. So anyway, with that, I will turn it over to Karina.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. And thank you all of you for tuning in. And I know there's a couple other people who asked about a recording that couldn't be here now. So appreciate all of you guys. We're super excited to connect with you guys and kind of share some of the latest news that's really, really been exciting and a huge buzz at Adobe. My name is Karina Anglada. I am a strategic development manager with Adobe, and I specialize in with our video tools. I work on a team that we kind of call ourselves, video workflow experts. So we work with all sorts of customers across the industry. My background, I came from an editing background. I was a producer editor for a long time, over 10 years in the sports industry. So have spent many, many hours in Premiere Pro, like I'm sure many of you here today. But before I introduce my colleagues, I want to hear in the chat, what kinds of projects are you working on right now? What things are you curious about? I'd love to just kind of get the chat pod engaged a little bit so we can kind of see some of the things that you're working on and what you're curious about. There's a lot of things that we could potentially cover today, but the main focus that we'll spend a lot of time on is, as Eric mentioned, Firefly. So Firefly is our creative generative AI engine, so artificial intelligence. And as you mentioned, it's just landed in Photoshop, and it's changing the way. I hear a little bit of echo. There we go. And it's just changing the way we work, and it's super exciting. And, we just enabled general access to Firefly. So if you were familiar with it before, you had to get on a waiting list. Now you can just sign up. So we'll drop that in the chat. All you would need is your Adobe ID. So the email that you use to generally access Creative Cloud. But we're super, super excited. So I'm going to throw it over to introduce my colleagues. Teresa, who is our senior product manager for Adobe Sensei and Cloud, and John Knack, who is our principal product manager. So I'll throw it over to Teresa to briefly introduce herself, and then John, and then we'll get into our content. So go ahead, Teresa.
Okay, yeah. Well, Karina said, my name is Teresa Diemel. I've actually been at Adobe for quite a while. I was on the digital publishing suite team back around 2011. I left and worked on making a holodeck for Paul Allen for about 5 years, and then I came back onto the video team. And do we want to have John do an intro before I jump in?
Yeah.
Or shall I? Okay.
Oh, John, I don't think we hear you. Let's see. We'll give him a second. And while we wait, throw it in the chat. I see, Kevin, you wrote that you do some commercial and social media work for a tech company, and Shelly, another support videos for a tech company as well. Maybe while John is figuring out, I still don't hear him. So Teresa, how about we go dive into your content so John can figure out his audio stuff.
Sounds good. No, we can't hear you, John. I'll go ahead and present. Sound good? Okay, cool. All right. So let me make sure I share sound. All right, can you, uh-oh. I need to install a Zoom audio device. I'm just gonna hit cancel and hope for the best. Actually, can I do a little, let me do a little sound test, if that's okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that works. I'm not hearing it on my end.
You're not hearing it? Okay.
Is Elon Musk in charge of audio today?
Well, I think audio is important. It seems like I should install that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let me see what this thing is. Okay.
And well, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, killer. Just, have you tried unplugging it and plugging it back in again? Yes. Excellent advice. Hey, just while Teresa's doing whatever. So, hey, everybody, nice to be here. I'm John Knack. I currently work on Firefly. I spent a lot of years at Adobe. I got into this because I was a frustrated animator back in the day using Flash, and I wanted After Effects for the web. So I tried to build that back in the .com era. And I spent like 10 years on Photoshop. I got back into video at Adobe. I left for 7 years to go to Google, work on like AI-powered imaging there. Then I came back, and now I've been working on generative imaging. So super excited to show you more and hear what people think. RIP Flash. Yeah, it had its moment. Then it became the F word for a while. Now it's been long enough. People are nostalgic again.
Good old Flash. All right.
And while Teresa's getting things situated, I wanted to ask, like, who here has anyone used Firefly already and signed up and played around with it? Okay, we've got a few. I see a few hands. Anyone in the chat? I know some people are off. Okay, Ivan's been in the chat. Okay, awesome. I love it. Any general thoughts that you've been excited about, or questions as we get situated here? And Teresa, I'm wondering if maybe I could have the video on standby as a backup.
You know what? There's only one that really requires audio. And so what I could do is just share this deck with people, or share a link to the post that it comes from. Why don't I do that? Because yeah.
Perfect.
I know we want to get to the discussion.
Awesome. And I see Ivan in the chat. Just keep rolling out the tools. Trust. You have seen nothing yet. So I'll throw it back over to Teresa.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, Karina. All right, yes, so I'm Teresa Diemel. I'm the product manager of DVA Sensei, so digital video audio at Adobe. First of all, I just want to start with what's Adobe Sensei. So Adobe Sensei uses AI and machine learning to embolden creatives, accelerate workflows, so you can effortlessly realize your vision. So making videos, motion graphics, and audio is awesome, but sometimes it's slow and sometimes it's intimidating. So just to take a look at some of the features that we've released in the last several years. Speech to text for captioning can be time consuming and expensive, so we prioritize that. Auto captioning, we use AI to make sure that the timing and the pacing of your captioning is something that's readable for folks. Scene edit detection is where you could pull a video in that someone else has already exported and it'll automatically cut up the scenes. Rotobrush 2 and After Effects allows you to select subjects so that you can do color adjustments or masking more easily. And then on the intimidating side, Remix allows you to shorten any song. And I got to say, this one is pretty amazing. I'm in a band. I took one of my band's own songs and I shortened it using Remix, and I did not feel like the song changed. It felt like it still maintained the verse, the chorus, the intro, the outro. So if you ever need to change the length of music, Remix is your friend in Premiere Pro. Content aware fill, that's where you can draw around something like a microphone that's in the way, or maybe you have something that's not historically accurate, and it will delete that content and then generate video to replace it. And then auto color, which has been trained on thousands of videos and photos, that just gets you to that automatic color correction. And then you can do your own style beyond that, but it gets kind of some of those boring and intimidating pieces out of the way so that you can really put your own personal style into it. So I just want you to be aware of our philosophy that whenever we are looking at things, we definitely want to make your creative workflow more fun, more engaging, and get some of those administrative things out of the way. And just in our May release, we launched text-based editing, and that's where you can have transcription associated with all your source footage. And creating a rough cut is as simple as cutting and pasting text, where you can highlight text, you can hit delete to get rid of content, you can look for filler words and pauses and select those and delete those, but you can also cut and paste to rearrange a video just like you would a Word document. So that's been a really exciting accelerator where from our customer feedback, it looks like we've sped up the rough cut portion of the workflow for dialogue-based things by about 4 to 5x. But here we are in generative AI, right? And I think there's so many people, when they talk about generative AI, they talk about we're going from horses to cars or any other similar analogies, where this generative AI is a shock to the system. It's a shock to the industry, and not just the creative industry. Of course, I'm sure you've been watching the news with ChatGPT and how that's changing jobs, white collar jobs like lawyers and administrators, right? We know that there's a fundamental shift, but I pulled this definition off the web in case we need to level set, but generative AI describes algorithms such as ChatGPT that can be used to create new content, including audio, code, images, text, simulations, videos. Recent breakthroughs in the field have the potential to drastically change the way we approach content creation. And this couldn't be more true. And as I come to all of you talking about generative AI, I just want to recognize that there are a lot of emotions around this. There's a lot of fear around this. There's also a lot of hope around generative AI. And it's just, it can be mind-boggling as we try to imagine the future. But first, I want to talk about just how a few people are using generative AI in video workflows today, just to kind of ground us in where we are right now. So this is my friend Todd. Todd is a creative. He's jack of all trades. He can do UX design, logo design, video editing. He jumps into Blender and does animation. He's a early adopter and the kind of guy that plays with everything, right? And this is Todd without all the outpainting. So he used DALL-E to generate this office for himself, but really this is the photo that he started with. But back around, I want to say the September, October timeframe when things were taking off, he sat down and he was like, okay, this whole DALL-E thing, is this going to replace my job? and he started to play. And Todd makes really cute monsters. So he had his original monster there, but then he took the image and he fed it into DALL-E, and he allowed DALL-E to send him a different image. And then he pulled what DALL-E spat out and put it in Photoshop and made changes to that, and kept having a little back and forth between his own designs that he had control over in Photoshop, and then gave it to DALL-E. And what he said about this is, artificial intelligence in art and design. Here are my latest experiments. I'm using my original illustrations and clay characters as prompts in DALL-E. I'm considering the AI to be a creative collaborator that I'm having a conversation with. However, I'm not using text prompts in these examples. It's all an image conversation. And so, you know, as the Sensei team, we think about this a lot, where Sensei features have been your assistant. And now we're getting into this notion of a collaborator, or somebody that's providing inspiration, or somebody that's having a creative conversation with you. And so how do we play in this space where it feels like we're still preserving our artistic authenticity? So here's the one that doesn't have, I wish it had audio, but this is something that Todd did. So once he used DALL-E to create a monster and settled on that, then he used Mug Life, which is motion capture. So it's not generative, but he used motion capture for the lip sync. And then he used After Effects puppet tool to just adjust some of the audio. But I'm still going to give you a chance to just watch what he's created.
Are the uses of adversity, which, like the toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel in its head.
And so the reason this is really interesting is because as we look across graphic designers, video editors, one thing that is really intimidating is animation. And it's not just intimidating, it's time consuming to learn, it's time consuming to do. And so, you know, in this scenario, Todd was really able to leapfrog over kind of the 80% of the animation workflow and then do the creative work with the last 20%.
Sweet.
Oh, let's see. Now, this is another more advanced example. So this is Don, and Don used ChatGPT-4 as a partner in writing a script. And I just want to acknowledge we're in a writer's strike right now. Like, this is a big deal, but he was using ChatGPT as more of a partner when he was writing the script. And then he used Wonder Dynamics. He filmed footage, like I think it was at a college campus. And then he used Wonder Dynamics to do these CG characters. So I'm going to play some of this. All right. So with this, you know, I saw Don give a talk, and what he said was the moat between what Hollywood can do and what an indie filmmaker can do is narrowing. That just a small group of people can do something that used to take hundreds of people. And then he was on stage with some folks from a CG VFX house, right? And they're the ones that are no longer having that moat that sort of protects their IP. But from their perspective, this also allows them to remove a lot of bottlenecks, that they're able to get to kind of that 60% faster, and then they can start to really focus on the details. And then this is just a video. Let's see. This video was shot just by 2 people, but then this video editor, Eric, he used the Photoshop beta and in-painting or outpainting for set extension. So while he had this really small room that he did some filming in, generative AI was helpful for set extension. And it's just a 2-person project, but they were able to do something that would have required a lot more people. So again, opening up opportunities for indie folks. Now, what I have here, you know, as we think about generative AI for video has a really long workflow with a lot of different aspects that touch the workflow. So from pre-production, when you're writing a story, writing a script, all the way to production with media intelligence and CGI. You can generate video end to end using QuickVid. You can do scaled versioning. There are a lot of different players in this space, not just for the video editing portion, but for the planning all the way to the exporting multiple versions. And then if you've ever looked at what Microsoft is doing with Copilot, that's also something we're looking at as well with ChatGPT. So for a total noob in video editing, can they type in just, how do I crop this video, right? And they could get instructions, but we can be at the point where it can also be doing some of the work, like blur all of the faces in this shot, or make this color adjustment to every drone shot that I have. So as we think long term, it's not just, what are the different creative pieces we can do, but also how can the Adobe tools help you while you're doing your work. And I put this typewriter up. So Robert Reich, Labor Secretary, I remember him citing a stat that back when typewriters were invented, they thought the 40-hour work week would be going down to a 20-hour work week. And so it's just kind of funny as I'm sitting here at my typewriter in Seattle and you are watching this on your typewriters in San Diego, and we all have typewriters in our pockets. Like, I'm sure that the folks that invented the typewriters and the economists that were making predictions, they just had no idea of what kinds of things would be unlocked once we started to use this technology. And I think they kind of made an assumption of, oh, we're just going to, people are going to work less. They're just going to go home and do nothing. But that's really not the way humanity works. And I think we cannot even imagine today what this is going to open up, that there are going to be just possibilities that we can't even think of right now. But something that's remained consistent since way before the typewriter is the ability to do storytelling, the ability to have ideas, the ability to communicate. So all the fundamentals will not change, but the way that your work will change in the next decade and my work will change in the next decade is it's just going to explode. So just quickly here, I'm going to show you the vision that we've put together for what generative AI could look like over the next several years at Adobe. And then I'll hand it over to John, our Firefly expert.
When I get to the crag, I'm putting on my shoes. Then I decided to go on the wall.
All right, thank you. And I'm just going to put a little feedback link in the chat pod too. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what your hopes and dreams are related to generative AI for video, we'd love to hear from you. And I will now pass it over to John.
Hey, Teresa, there was a
Yeah.
question before we let
Yeah.
you go. Somebody had asked, what does image conversion mean? I guess you'd mentioned that fairly early in your talk, and MH, not sure who that is, but was asking what image conversion means.
Did I say that? Was that when I was talking about?
Oh, I think it was image conversation with the
Oh,
quote.
conversation. Yes. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that basically when you feed an image into something like DALL-E, you can ask it to create variations. And then from those variations, and maybe and one thing that you can also do is like, you can give adjustments, like I want it to be really different from what I've just given you, or I want it to be slightly different from what I've just given you. And so that was the image conversation that he was having. That one, he did not use a text prompt for that. That was really, there are, it's really like, let me think. You can, depending on, there are a lot of tools out there, but you can put an image in and then it can be like, I can't remember what the parameters are. It could be like lighter, darker, it could be make it look radically different or just slightly different. Like, just as an example with slightly different is like some people are doing little animations where it's like, take this and make it slightly different. And then take this and make it slightly different. And this, it's almost like an onion skinning kind of animation, but done with generative AI. Okay. And then what Adobe Premiere plugins do we need to start training? So right now we don't have Premiere plugins for generative AI. There's just a lot of other tools out there that can be played with. And I wonder, maybe we can send a list after, Karina. I could compile kind of a good list.
Yeah, we can definitely put together some resources, Eric, to share with you. Like, I know I just dropped the text-based editing overview in the chat, and we can send that out for you guys to check out.
Okay. You know, is Firefly a standalone or something that comes within Premiere from Kevin? That's really, I wonder if we should go over to John and then do a little more Q&A, because John owns the Firefly piece.
That is such a nice way to put it. By the way, I did a podcast with my friend Deke McClellan, who wrote the Photoshop Bible. He's blowing up text in the background, so you'll see snarky comments when I share my screen. But yeah, he very generously and erroneously labeled me head of AI at Adobe, which my actual boss's boss, who is such a person, was probably not super amused by, although we'll get to that. Anyway, yeah, so how do I share my screen? I'm not seeing a share button.
There should be in the bar down at the bottom, a green share your screen button.
No, now it is. Yep, cool, thank you. All right, give me 1 second. And all right, are you guys, oh no, I gotta actually hit the button. Okay. Are you guys seeing a little spaceship on Twitter?
You see
Okay.
Paul Trillo. Yep.
Yes, yes. So you may well know Paul, amazing visual artist. And I came over to Twitter just to find something else. And this is just like the pace with which things are going off. So he was just DMing this thing that, here, sorry, let me, I don't know if you guys hear audio, I'll just mute it. But yeah, just, you know, as Teresa's getting at, there's so many things we want to do, and we haven't optimized at all for what Paul is doing here yet. But I take it what he's doing is using the generative fill features that dropped yesterday in Photoshop, as well as on the Firefly website, which, as Teresa said, you can go use right now. There used to be a waiting list until Monday, which seems like 6 years ago. Anyway, you can, you know, if you've been waiting, thank you for your patience. That was not by design. We just wanted to make sure the whole thing would actually scale and not produce, you know, sketchy results. But anyway, yeah, creators are already putting it to all kinds of interesting uses. And by the way, feel free to jump in with comments. I'm kind of multitasking, trying to see comments, but I'm also just trying to focus on the demo. So, and the other thing, just this guy, Luca Prasso, I worked with him at Google, but he's a DreamWorks guy, and like he's also DMing furiously. And this is not to name drop, it's just to say like all of these amazing artists are coming out of the woodwork with all these cool things they're doing. So let's see. Oh, the other thing, and this is not just the Red Bull talking, although I do have that going. I'm trying to like queue up demos for you guys. I'm also finding demos that I've literally never seen. So you're potentially the first people outside Adobe. In fact, I'll but guarantee you are, to see this thing. I won't get way into it because I've never seen it before. It just looks cool. It's Image Basher. Take that for what it is. But if you go to the Firefly site, there's this kind of like sizzle reel of all kinds of new stuff coming. And this is one of the ones that we touch on for like, 11 seconds maybe. That'll be the next user group meeting if you like us enough to have us back. But we'll get to that. But yeah, so you can tell things are popping off internally. There's all of these internal groups who are spinning up efforts, and it's super exciting. I kind of imagine, I don't know if from the show of hands if most folks have seen the technologies. I'll just give you the super briefest overview of the things that are public, because I figure most people have probably seen it. And if not, you can just come to firefly.adobe.com and you can kick the tires, and that's probably the most compelling way to do it. But I'll touch on it just as a foundation, and then I'll show you the things that we're working on that aren't yet public, which is probably more interesting. So the core is just text to image. And so you come in here, and certainly you can type in your own prompt at the bottom, or you can browse all of these cool ones that people on the team made. We are working very hard at the moment to turn this into like an actual social feed. And so I have a whole pitch around like, what is the Lightroom preset of AI? And how do we help creators, encapsulate these little recipes, which will get richer and richer very quickly, and then be able to pass those around and use them across surfaces. So lots to think about there. Let's see, I always like these sort of psychedelic caterpillars, because sure, who doesn't like a psychedelic caterpillar? So just by clicking these, you get all kinds of interesting creations. And like I say, in the interest of time, I won't go into a lot of creation, but you can get these nice big previews. Another big thing is just to try to give more visual affordances so that you can explore quickly. Discord is great for chat, and Midjourney is a brilliant engine. It's funny though to me that we're kind of in this weird dichotomy where we took this huge leap from like, early 80s, like Apple II ASCII art to the Macintosh. And at the same time, the control surface has sort of regressed to this like command line interface where you have to know like this Gnostic series of cheat codes, to make art, which is sort of weird. And so I'm sure, Midjourney is working on a proper GUI. But, that's one of the things we really leaned into, as you'd expect from Adobe. So, like, okay, I've got these psychedelic caterpillars, but what would they look like with a synthwave treatment? And so by clicking that, you can see it adds this little chip synthwave, and I can hit generate. And I think I've literally never tried this. It's always more fun to go without a net. And so somewhere 5, 10, 12 seconds, thereabouts, you should get some results. And yeah, so that's the synthwave caterpillar. Now, if I hit the back button, you should be able to kind of toggle quickly between these guys and see kind of what you like. Another thing I really like that was a recent addition, kind of subtle, is that you can hit this little heart and you can make a favorite. So when I do that, you can then go over and view favorites, and now you can see there's the little caterpillar. I was also screwing around trying to make generative fill. So PHIL is in Dr. Phil. So, I'm a dad, so I got to make the dad jokes, coming in with those. So anyways, because back in the old days, actually, if I get out of Paul's thing, let me see, where did I put it? So somebody made content aware fill, and I feel like generative fill just dunks on content aware fill for days. So where did I put it? Oh yeah. Also, I'll just gratuitously plug my blog. It's funny that I still have a blog. It's like pulling out a flip phone. Like, what are you doing, you monster? But anyway, fill to pop. So here's content aware fill, some ancient graphic somebody made. I was trying to spruce that up with generative fill. And I'll plug this just to say, I've got a whole category on here of, there's like a superset of AI/ML related things. And then there's within that Adobe Firefly. So if you want to just see a lot, thank you, Karina, for sharing that. Yeah, if you want to just see the things that I find interesting that I'm sharing, by all means, please jump in there. And yeah, just all the cool stuff. I'm sure you guys have seen a ton of this where people are doing all these mashups of like Wes Anderson and different media. But I can't keep up. No one can. I mean, this is like somebody who's got, Skybox, where you can like synthesize 360 immersive views just by like drawing in space. I won't get off on all that. But yeah, so much going on. So another thing that I love also launched yesterday is that you can sort of teleport from these creations right into the new generative fill module. So let's say I like this guy, and I'm going to hit generative fill, and it's kind of subtle, but we actually shot you over to this other state where now you can paint on things. And so, of course, I should have like prepped this and had a good idea in mind. And of course, I have not, because again, it's more thrilling this way. So how about a fuzzy, adorable firefly? No idea if this will work, I promise you, but hopefully it will. And if it doesn't, whatever, it's worth every penny you paid. Okay, that's weird. But what's cool, the nature of this is you get multiple variations. Okay, I actually like that. That's pretty good. And you can try these guys. So the nature of what we call in painting and out painting is it's not just generation, it's generation conditioned on another image, which we can talk about some more. And so here, of course, it's conditioned on the surrounding pixels. And as we'll get to with Photoshop in a minute, that's really the secret sauce or the key sauce anyway, with the generative fill command. So yeah, if you like this, go ahead and keep it. If you don't, you can cancel it and you can do something different. By the way, one of the things that came out really early in our user research is being able to synthesize from stuff from scratch is really powerful, really cool, great for ideation. But what resonated most strongly with Photoshop users is just the ability to like take the tool you've got and make it that much better. So it's like you've got content aware fill. What if it was just smarter? What if it could do things that has never been possible in the past? And so let me tab over there. And I'm kind of just jumping between the website and the tool. So yesterday is really the first time we started wiring these technologies into the desktop apps. And as you can imagine, that's a huge leap. So our intention is use the website to try out new things, get feedback. Folks can tell us what they like about the experience, the interface, the model quality. We can usually do that more quickly than we can get things into desktop tools. And the idea is, based on your feedback, to improve it and then to make sure that the desktop experience is really excellent. And so I took this photo out in Ely, Nevada. It's an amazing spot if you're a photographer, if you're into railway stuff. They have some photo workshops, which are really cool. I got my little mini me here who's super hyped to get into photography. And so what you can do, I just created a keyboard shortcut. Hopefully it's big enough on your screen, but there's just a little generative fill dialog box. And I put a busy railroad yard. Now, if I wanted, by the way, I could just put in nothing, and that has the effect of sort of doing a content aware fill. So it'll just kind of make its best guess, and we could even try that here just to see what happens. But what's especially cool is you'll notice it attaches results to a smart object. So back in the day, this was one of the things I really championed in Photoshop. Okay, so now what you've got is this non-destructive entity with a mask on it, which is this smart object. And you've got, again, I don't really know how to see, I can't zoom in, but take my word, it says variations. And you can then click amongst these and kind of see whatever treatment you like. Now, if you don't like any of these, or if you just want to try something different, you can do that. So just for the lulls, I'm going to remove a railroad yard and see if I like it more, just letting it have free reign. Again, all this stuff basically to the right of the caboose is synthetic. And I don't know, it takes, some tens of seconds. Obviously, we'll work on speeding up all this stuff. Okay, all right, well, that's pretty cool, actually. So I didn't tell it a railroad yard, but just based on the surroundings, the lighting, the tonality, etc., it's filling those things in. And of course, this is a layer, which is non-destructive. And what's also nice, especially, is that first tranche of variations I got are all there available as well. And so, I can basically screw around, try different things. There's never any penalty to it. Like at the end of the day, hopefully what you'd expect is it's just a normal Photoshop layer, and it has all of those parametrically generated outputs attached to it. So as with all the stuff, oh, by the way, question? Oh, so somebody's asking where would I find this? Yeah, thank you. I totally omitted that. So if you go up to the little CC app, which is usually the thing that has like a red dot and some number that you ignore, if you go down to beta apps, you can then opt into various pre-release, like I think Premiere's in there, but certainly After Effects, some of the other, yep, there it is. So you can just go and install stuff if you haven't. In this case, I've already installed Photoshop, and then I think as long as you're a subscriber, you'll get it. It installs in parallel with the shipping version of Photoshop, so there's no risk. It's not going to like stomp on your production build. But yeah, then you just launch Photoshop, and it is generative fill is under the edit menu somewhere. I always go to the help menu to find stuff. Yeah. Now it's not active now because I already have a generative fill layer. But if you had just a normal selection, you'd get that. So really, hopefully very straightforward to use. like I say, I've just wired up a keyboard shortcut because I'm using it all the time. And again, I kind of took my eye off the ball here. I've sort of forgotten where the boundaries are. I was also exploring it earlier, getting different variations. And again, what's cool, I put focus on this other object, and you've still got your whole generation history. So really you can explore very freely. It, again, this is all very 1.0. It's not even 1.0. I should stipulate this is all in beta. And one of the key things is, because we're still training the model and we're still working out the compensation structure for artists whose work went into this, i.e. people who have contributed to Adobe stock, we put a label on just to say this is not for commercial use. Obviously, we're not going to police that, and you can use it as you see fit. But that's one of the things we're working really hard on. So it's kind of like a whole can of worms with legality, but know that those are the things that mean a lot to us to get right, frankly. And we also really value your feedback. Like Adobe is, much like Teresa and Karina and me, like it tends to be drawn from people who love this stuff, and we were, working in the industry. And, I always say I was just a pissed off Adobe customer. So it's just like, do you guys not use these tools? Like, I just, I love them, but like they drive me crazy. I got to get in there and try to make stuff better. And so, yeah, we want to serve you. And, we can't do that well if it's, it's not respecting the rights of creators. Okay, so I'm going to keep jumping around, but please do keep, keep chats or just break in anytime. So that is all the stuff. Well, it's not all the stuff that's shipping. I would encourage you to go play around with the text effects. Those are really pretty sick. I'll just plug one thing that people often don't notice. But if I just said, let's say Premiere, and I wonder if that covers out. Let me actually just do that again here. And kind of got the chunky old font. But it is actually turning each glyph into an individual rendered character. And then you can, of course, as you'd expect, go among those different treatments. So the sort of subtle thing that I really like is that if you turn off the background color, you get transparency. Then if you download, you actually get a PNG file with a nice 8-bit alpha channel. Or you can also go to the overflow menu and you can copy to clipboard. And if I then do that and go to Photoshop and paste, it's hopefully what you'd expect, which is bitmap data with, again, a nice clean alpha channel. So I tend to use this to build up like, multi-line compositions where you've got, could be the same treatment, it could be different treatments. One of the little shortcomings that just kind of bugs me, to be honest, which we're working to fix, is the rendering of characters gets repeated. Like I wouldn't normally draw this to your attention, but what I end up sometimes doing is, so like, okay, this E is duped. So just by going back to the Firefly site and hitting refresh, I'm going to tell it to use the same prompt and the same character and give me a different treatment. And, kind of maybe sometimes it works better if you're like just going within variations. But long story short, what I end up doing is copying a couple of times, and then I can kind of mix and match the characters. Like, oh, I like this E from this one. I like the M from this one, or whatever. So cool feature also on its way to Adobe Express. Not sure if you know Express, but it's sort of, it's meant to be a super approachable kind of like communicator oriented tool. So it's more like template driven. But yeah, definitely one of those things we're working to get into there. All right, let me get to some cool nerdery. So there's a technology called ControlNet. Let me start there. And so ControlNet is kind of a bag of tricks, and it lets you influence the generation of images by using other images. And the images can be derived from things like 3D models. So, if you have depth in a scene, we can either, kind of compute that with a machine learning model, just using an RGB photo, or, if you have like an iPhone or different camera that captures depth, we can have the depth channel there. Or if you do something like, compose with 3D, we can then obviously calculate the depth and, get this like black and white map. However you come at it, what you can then do is use that to condition the generation of pixels. You can also use just like two-dimensional images. And so, so full disclosure, I was using just a hosted ControlNet integration somebody did with Stable Diffusion. But that's just kind of a preview of what we're working on for Firefly. So these particular outputs are not from Firefly, but they're the kind of thing we're working to enable. So here I just took this like very simple 1-bit stock art image, and it says ideas, and I fed it something like, you know, metal letters, wooden background, beautiful glowing light bulbs, and I got this. And it's like, that's pretty good. To me, it's kind of the point of eerie. The fact that it knows this little light bulb shape is actually a light bulb, and it casts light, and it's like warm and diffuse on the wood. And here I just messed around with the prompt and the strengths, and I got these different treatments. So again, one of the things we hear is, you know, from creators, it's like, well, clearly don't replace me. I like my job. I got into it for a reason. What I want is you to just like help me accelerate what I'm already doing. You know, it's like if I'm trying to design a logo, you know, I can afford to do a certain number of explorations in normal time. But if you gave me tools like this, I could kind of take it in a variety of directions much more rapidly. Those could be spatial, they could be, you know, rendering different parameters, they could be a combination of the two. Again, back to the old blog, I like to just kind of use it as glorified bookmarks. And one of the cool experiments somebody did was using it to make these amazing interpretations of famous logos. So, you know, just by feeding in the mermaid from Starbucks and giving it some parameters, you get like this sort of like Nicole Kidman treatment of Starbucks. I think my favorite one is Burger King. So just feeding in, you know, these very simple shapes, and then you actually get like this rendered burger, right? So you think about like, oh my God, if I knew Maya or Blender or whatever, how long would it take you to do that? For me, the answer is infinity, because I'm not going to go there. It's just out of scope. But yeah, there's a whole series of these that people have made, and I'll show you in a minute kind of like what we're doing to play with that. But before I get totally distracted from the 3D topic, let me show you what we're doing there. So got to find the right tab. That's always half my life. Actually, let me bring up a different build, and the other half of my life is re-logging into different Adobe tools. Hopefully the thing is running. Okay, cool. If not, no big deal, because I have the Julia Child pre-cooked turkey ready to whip out, which I'll probably do anyways, because it goes faster too. So, okay, yeah, what we're getting at, and by the way, this UI is absolutely a work in progress. There's so much going on. Yesterday, I found myself like kind of kit bashing a bunch of screenshots, which did not really endear me to the designers. But I'm also like, look, you want your work, which is better than mine. So please jump in. But just to show you, you know, it's a super simple 3D composition environment. And the idea is not to, you know, be really like 3D for 3D nerds. It's just to let you compose a scene more readily and have more spatial control and compositional control. So, you know, I could say, you know, again, a beautiful, I don't have to shout in all caps. And now, again, I have no idea. I can spell, that's the other hard part. So what we're exploring here is like, what is the best intersection between the kind of prompts you can do with, you know, just making something from scratch, and then conditioning with some imagery. Again, here you're composing the imagery by moving around 3D primitives, and then you're feeding that in. And yeah, actually, that's pretty cool. So let me take you over to a version that was actually done by one of the engineers on the team. Tell me if you guys can't see QuickTime. I have sometimes like a weird conflict with screen sharing. But this will give you okay, beautiful, thanks. An even better taste. So this is sped up a little bit in the interest of a quick demo. But if you wanted to build up a city out of these little primitives, they just kind of creating a simple ground plane, have this little building object, moving it around. Here, I think it's just a rectangle, and moving that around, and then goes in and types something like, you know, New York City, what does it say, skyscrapers in Chicago, next to the river, and hits generate. And this little box is your viewport. And so here you now have a bunch of visualizations that attempt to match that prompt. And again, if you like it, great, keep them, download them. Here it changed it to New York. It's rendering again. and getting different treatments. So the quality of everything, obviously work in progress. Sometimes it's the geometry is a little off, but the fact that you can do this at all to me is just, it's what my buddy learned radio repair. He said it was FM technology, which is just effing magic, which I was stuck with me. Let me show you one other cool example of that. So I was screwing around with like just the most dirt simple, yeah, actually, I gotta find the right clip. The most dirt simple shapes I could think of, which is just a torus, basically a donut, and a sphere. And I was like, oh, if you kind of intersect the ground, that looks a little bit like a sea serpent. So I typed in something like an intimidating sea monster rising from a dark and stormy sea. You hit generate and give it a second, and boom, you've got some pretty distinctive sea monsters. So it's like, I don't know if that was what I was going for, but like that can be part of the fun of this thing. It's very serendipitous. Obviously, we'll work to give you more control so you can kind of dial it in. But again, it's like you don't know what you don't know. And with traditional tools, it can be laborious to really explore. And so here, again, just kind of change the viewport and you're composing the scene just with these, like, again, two of the most dirt simple low poly shapes you could imagine. Okay, so I'll show you another variant on what we're thinking there. So if I go to the right build, I think it is this one. Yeah, so control net. So again, what you'll see in terms of UI is not baked. It's sort of, yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with projects where you've got like all the pieces and parts sort of individually lying around the shop floor in different, pools of grease. And then we got to actually like jam these guys together. But what's distinctive here, what you won't get yet in the public version of Firefly is this reference image. So you'll notice I clicked on this like kind of stock art of this farmer, and I got these different treatments of sort of, all right, different guys, different sort of visuals. I can mix in different rendering. But one of the things we often hear about stock is like, it just looks really stock, right? And so somebody was in agribusiness marketing and they're like, yeah, I look up farmer and I just get like 90% middle-aged white guys, which is true. There's a lot of middle-aged white guy farmers, but there's a lot of other people who do farming. So what if you wanted to say like an older woman? So I'm literally just changing the prompt by a couple characters saying an older woman on a farm sunny day. So now it's going to take the pose of this guy and it's now changing the person. And you can kind of go for days on this. You could, again, you can play with all the rendering parameters, but you could also play with, the dimensions of the person. And it's like, oh, yeah, actually that's pretty good. And it certainly doesn't look like just a, cheeseball stock photo. No offense to stock. That like is very distinctive and looks stocky. It's a little more interesting. What's also cool then is you can start mixing and matching these different image conditioned generations. So what it's doing here is instead of you having to kind of devise a bunch of stuff purely with prompts, you can use a reference image. So you could take, Van Gogh's Starry Night or something like that. Now, I'll be candid and say the reason we haven't just turned that on from the jump is like, well, what do we think is like ethical and cool? And I mentioned Starry Night because it's all right, hugely famous artist, deceased, it's not going to lose any work. It gets touchier when it's like, oh, could I just like take, Greg Rukowski's image and like use that for conditioning? So technically, there's not a ton we can do to sort of know the provenance of things. We actually do have some really cool work around content authenticity, but obviously 99.9% of the images out there don't have tags, so we can know like, oh, do you own this, rights-wise? We want to work towards that world. So I think what we'll do in the short term is just try to advise people like, hey, if you're doing this, be thoughtful, make sure it's something that the originator is okay with you using, but something that's in the public domain, famous piece of art, obviously should be straightforward. So this is the kind of stuff we're exploring. The other thing, let me just clear this off. And there's all the like train your own model stuff. So if you remember last fall, there was like this little mini boomlet where you could train a model and make like AI selfies. So you're like, hey, pick 5 pictures of yourself, upload them. We'll give you 200 treatments. Well, here we've got a bunch of Adobe execs, Eli, David Alexandru. So now if I want to take Eli, this specific human, and put him in there, I took off the sort of painterly rendering So now it's going to take the custom train model of Eli. It's a little longer to calculate because it has to hit this extra pass, but it's again using this farmer. Oh, I probably shouldn't have said an older woman. I'll modify that. No offense to Eli. So I'm going to get a little bit slightly misshapen results, but hopefully what you see at a glance is it is more the likeness of this specific person. So how about I just say a happy man on a farm sunny day, and we'll see what happens. So again, you can tell all this stuff's not ready to ship yet, but it gives you a sense of the pipeline of technology that we're trying to wire in there. I'll give that a few seconds to think. Actually, let me just jump to the Julia Child version. So this is some output I got. So here I took David, one of the other execs, put him in there. Here I was playing with Eli. He ended up looking like this little, woodland creature, which I thought was kind of charming. He's actually a very nice guy, so I hope he won't mind that I did this. But again, it's just trying to take a prompt and a specific person and mix them together. Here, I didn't want to change the composition at all. I just wanted to use it and then pair it with this painterly technique. So it took this sort of constructivist icon and did that. Here I did it with a Starry Night sort of treatment. But in this case, I was like, well, could I get a different, realistic human whose pose is conditioned off that? This is the kind of thing, again, which is, if you try to really put the current tool set to the use, you sort of run out of steam. And so being able to have this conditioned image is really powerful. You can notice, again, it's not quite ready for prime time. There's some artifacts on the sky, but it was able to largely match the prompt. And so this is the kind of thing we're working towards. I just glanced over, is it possible to change the lighting in an image without changing anything else? So actually, that was something I spent a lot of time on before we had Firefly last year. I think the TLDR is yes. It's interesting. Some of my Google research teammates have been doing cool work. So have Adobe folks. It's this very small world. And if I, let me just go off script here for a second and bring up this demo. So this is something recorded a couple of years ago. This was using a technology called StyleGAN from NVIDIA, which is actually, you may or may not know this, it's probably sitting on your computer right now because it's part of neural filters. So if you've ever used Smart Portrait in Photoshop, it's part of the tech underlying that. Obviously, the frame rate's a little lower on sharing, but what you can hopefully see is you're able to traverse this space and mutate a lot of characteristics of these people very quickly. So this makes an amazing demo, of course, but realistically, probably what you don't want to do is change this, person A morphed into person B. You just want person A, but you want to morph just the lighting characteristics. And that's where it gets a lot trickier because, as a human, obviously the uncanny valley is totally real. We're super sensitive to anything which oh, my nose got longer or my eyes started drifting or something like that. But there is this class of technology we've been exploring, which lets you kind of zero in on those properties. In fact, there's a thing called DragGAN. People could not stop sending this to me last week. If I could find the link, I could show it. But basically, it's purporting to let you do that kind of thing. If you look closely at the demo, what the hell? I'll just search it up here. Hopefully, it'll load. It's this little guy. You might have seen this last week. So it is super amazing. Just kind of keep your eye on it though. Like this cat though, you notice as you close the cat's eye, maybe this isn't the right clip, but it kind of turns into a different cat, and the similar, this lady, if you knew her well, that might be more significant. And so actually here, again, subtly, this is not to cast any aspersions, it's just to talk about the nature of this tech. The woman's face shape and skin tone was changing. And so a lot of the art in making this stuff practical is to really, surgically sort of isolate those characteristics that you want to change from the ones that you want to hold constant. Okay.
Hey, John, there's
yes.
some questions popping up around equity with the training data, as well as Eurocentric beauty standards in stock. Can you talk a little bit about our AI ethics process and
yes, thank you for whoever's folks raising those, because these are super top of mind things. In fact, I'll be honest with you, when I first got to Adobe, I was like, unless we can get this right, probably the best thing I can do is not ship anything. We want to be really, really thoughtful. And also just kind of candidly, some things feel like super cool and people are like, yes, great, I get why you're doing it, and I'm on board. Some are like, am I cool with that? Like if you use a person, person A, and you start adding, ethnic characteristics of person B, and you're changing them, does that feel right? I don't know. Before we ship this, I mean, we want to get a lot of feedback. One of the things we might want to do actually is like, instead of using a specific human photo, we can just like take the depth map derived from it. And then you're almost using it more like in the mannequin mode, right? You could also imagine the 3D composer. It's like, okay, I want to put a person over here. I want to define that person's characteristics, but I feel weird if it's like mutating a specific human into this other person, So again, we can kind of decouple a little bit the technology from the way it's presented. In terms of training, it does train on Adobe stock plus public domain images, but anybody who's looked for stock, if you look for a very specific thing, you'll often find people are underrepresented. The example I tried was I said Asian American policewoman, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll get like 10 or 20 photos. I literally got one person, and there were a couple variations, but it was always the same lady. And again, that's why I'm like putting my finger on the the farmer thing. It's like definitely skewed towards a particular demographic. What we try to do though is when you're and I'll go just back to the main site. When you just type something naive like, here, let me log back in. Sorry, this is, again, half of my day is re-logging in.
Log in, like I just yesterday punched in construction worker, and it wasn't just white men. It was
yes,
of gender and race.
Yeah, so let's say, like literally if I just say a CEO, now it notices, hey, prompt too short, so fair point. But let me just see. And hopefully what you're seeing is like, okay, so there's some men, there's women, there's ethnic diversity, there's age diversity. And so we do a lot of what they call, prompt engineering behind the scenes. So you take this little tiny prompt, but really what's being fed to the model has a lot of efforts that go in to try to make it better in terms of representation. Another piece of the puzzle is making sure that whatever generations we do in terms of quality are substantially similar across the board. So clearly it would suck if, ethnic groups A and B produce really high quality results and, C, D, and E get like crummier results. So there's actually, I keep encouraging our like ethical innovation team to share more of their results. Hopefully they'll get to do that soon. But we actually do a ton of crowdsourcing. So every time we rev the model, they have a bunch of like test prompts. They put them out as these big data sets. They put them to, it's like a mechanical Turk process, and they have people rate them, how true to the prompt is it? How realistic is it in terms of like, facial features or body? And then what we look for is like, is everything within a small margin of error across groups? It's not going to be identical, but is it like equally fair, essentially? So part is representation, part is quality testing, part is ethics. Not to put too fine a point on it, but a lot of my week last week was in testing to make sure that, God forbid, inadvertently, people weren't getting bad results with generative fill. Now, there's cases where it's like, all right, if you take somebody in a swimsuit and you try to, Photoshop off their swimsuit, what should we do? And these are interesting questions we didn't really have to contend with before because the computer didn't know, like, what is a swimsuit or what is a human body? Well, now it does. So we do a bunch of work to try to prevent not safe for work results. Now, you could reasonably philosophically argue, is that the role of the Adobe? Like, should we prevent that? Like, what's the right degree of human expressivity? We've made the editorial choice. Okay, we're not going to produce that kind of content. But we do some pretty rigorous testing to make sure it doesn't happen. We also do a bunch of like passes. So not just evaluating the prompt, but and not just evaluating the input pixels, but once we've generated it, then we look at the generated data and we say, okay, does this also match or does it pass our like not safe for work classifier? Now it is still possible that you'll get a problematic result. So just, by the way, with whatever results you get, one of the things that's super helpful is if you take the time, it's like, is this good or bad? It's like, yeah, I kind of like this squirrel, this is good. And you can tell us more if you want to, but you don't have to. If you get something which is like truly offensive or problematic or whatever, please do hit this little report button. It will send a copy of the image to us. We look at every single one of them, and you could say, is it biased? Is it offensive? Kind of tick all the boxes that it, hopefully doesn't match, but it might. You can add some narrative if you want, explain what you think went wrong. And like I say, we literally look at every single one of those and, you know, try to zero out incidents where, you know, the diversity isn't good, the results aren't fair, you know, there was something, you know, there's nudity. And some of the cases are tough. It's stuff that's like, you know, if you take a picture of me, I'm just wearing swim trunks, no shirt, and all you do is like, you know, the photo only captured me from the waist up, and then you extend the canvas in Photoshop and you do from the waist down, you know, what should it produce? Well, what we attempt to produce is me wearing swim trunks, right? We're not trying to produce nudity. And again, I think there should be a very low chance that that would happen. But part of the point of having this thing in beta and you know, opening it up for feedback is to, you know, catch any cases where there is something problematic. As soon as I stop talking, which is rare, I know I will remember all the things I have forgotten to show you. But that's kind of the main stuff I wanted to cover. Teresa, Karina, other folks, like, do comments, questions, anything you guys want to talk about?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've found as a common question from a lot of folks is, you know, some of the things that we've showcased aren't currently available, right? If you do go to the main website, right, text to image is there, but a lot of these things are what we're exploring. So you can imagine the possibilities. Another question that we've gotten a lot is, can you currently import your own photos, right? That's not the right now, what's accessible to everyone isn't available, but those are things that we're all exploring.
Right.
And if you go to the main page, which I've dropped the main page and I'll drop it again, you'll see all of the things that not all of the things that John has mentioned, but inspiration, things that we're looking for, things that we're exploring down the road. So you guys can get the ideas and get the creative gears kind of turning. So I just wanted to call that out there.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. And let me just go back for one second. I'll just drop the link in the chat as well. But so we have a Discord forum, which is active to a fault. Like I'm old and thus cannot hang with Discord. I have to have my teenage gamer sons help me out. But tons of discussion there. There's also a support community, which is linked from there. And probably the key link, let me just again drop this in the chat, is where you can browse feature requests and you can upvote them. And this has been a godsend for the product managers, making the case that, like, hey, people really do care about, you know, X versus Y. So one of the top things is like some sort of personal archive. And so we've kind of solved that with the favorites. It's not a total solution, right? They're local only, you can't share them. There's like a million things we want to add, but like, at least for now, you can kind of just like pin the good stuff. Eventually we'll let you, you know, hopefully promote that and share it. And like, you can imagine all kinds of like amazing remixes, like people with Lightroom. But the second one here is upload a reference image. And, you know, if you unpack that, that could mean a few different things. It's, do you want it just for style? Do you want it to like guide the composition? Do you want to use 2 different images in 2 different ways? Do you want to bake those into a prompt and share that as part of a recipe? So there's like a ton of things you can do. As Karina said, you can't do that yet, but as you can tell, it's in development. And yeah, this is, so now that we've knocked off number 1, it's like, let's move to number 2. And then, you know, hopefully there's a bunch of stuff people haven't even thought of that we can also add.
That's awesome, John. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
I would say one question that I was part of a discussion before we got on here. We're talking about this stuff, and something that came up was the issue, and I think, John, you kind of mentioned a little bit about this when you were talking, but the issue of copyright. Like I know that like right now it's not open for commercial use, but at some point it's going to be. I mean, if I want to create, you know, if I need to create something using it and I need to put it into a project, you know, for a commercial client, how does that work? Who owns the copyright on that image? Does Adobe own it? Do I own it? Does, you know, since I'm the one that created it in Firefly,
Yeah.
you know, and then if it's generative, meaning that it's pulling from all these various sources, do you all track, you know, is there like metadata somewhere that says this image was created, you know, via X, Y, and Z, you know, that sort of formed it, and, you know, and do those people get compensated? I mean,
Yeah. That's so. So it's funny. My family has had a law firm in this little town for 125 years. I consciously escaped the practice of law. But that's where this conversation lives right now. It's a lot of people pulling on those strings and saying like, well, if I change 1 pixel, you know, in my photo, is it still my photo? If I change half the pixels, like if those came from AI. So there's a ton of parallels with fair use conversations with music and, you know, other variants of remixing. I think, you know, other folks jump in if you have a better understanding. I think where things stand is like, I don't know if it was a Supreme Court case, but a court case was like, if it's effectively entirely a generated image, no one owns the copyright. It's like it is produced by an amalgamation of, you know, literally millions of input images from probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of individuals, and then it's, you know, run through a lot of unique generative capabilities. I think where hopefully it'll shake out more or less as follows. One is, you know, broadly speaking, we can put these like nutritional facts on the can, which is the content authenticity stamp. So like if you go and, you know, firefly.adobe.com, just click an image, try to download it, it'll pop a little dialogue and be like, hey, we're gonna put these like CAI credentials on here. Now, of course, you can, you know, manually pry them off if you want to. It's not about like preventing certain classes of use so much as it's just like, hey, have there be a trail of breadcrumbs. So in the future, you know, if you want to license this sort of as like IP evolves, that'll be more doable. When we get into things like being able to reference specific images or shapes or whatever for input, then it becomes a lot clearer, right? And then it could be like, well, I actually want to license this particular, you know, watercolor from a particular artist, and I want them to be compensated, and I want, you know, and they're cool with it, right? They've put their work up as eligible for this kind of thing. Part of the trail of breadcrumbs should specifically, it's like, oh, it's Teresa's painting, and therefore, you know, I want to use that. Or like I say, this sort of multimodality gets really funky where it's like, oh, what about the song she wrote? Like somehow can we interpret the song as pixels, and like, would that be cool? I mean, like in principle, it should work. And so, but it's a really evolving space. And, you know, what happens if you then take that derivative image and you put it in your Premiere project, and then it's like you render something out? Like at what point, you know, do you still own copyright of the sort of compound document into which it's been nested? Again, I'm kind of glad to have backed away from the law, but it's a super interesting conversation, and hopefully, you know, you guys here will help guide us through it, because I don't think anybody has all the answers, and you know, we want to navigate really thoughtfully such that you can feel good about what we're doing. You know, it's pro creator, it's, you know, it's to your advantage. I mean, obviously it's disruptive. It's the same as like, you know, maybe it's not exactly the same, but like in the 90s, I was a web designer. I used to be able to charge a client for 8 hours of work to make a GIF banner ad. And I was like incredibly good at telling a whole story in like 9.95 kilobytes. And then ImageReady came out, and it's like, yeah, I can do that in 20 minutes. And it's like, now can I still bill them for the other 7.5? And it's like, well, momentarily, but it's not ethical, and they'll catch on. It's like, okay, but cool. I'm not spending my day in like Debabilizer making these stupid, you know, whatever I was doing. It's like I just freed up and I did, you know, 10 times as much work. And so I think this will kind of mutate in the same way. I think basically if we take, I mean, no, forgive the profanity, but there's a great essay called don't give your users shit work, right? And it's like, what is shit work? And it's like, well, it's like curating your friend circle on Google Plus, or, you know, what I used to do is like take PSD files and get them into Flash. And it's like I came to Adobe because like somebody has to put a fork in that. That's like a horrible misuse of creative people's time, right? And so if we can focus the AI stuff on getting the things out of your process that suck, and help you like, hey, maybe I want to compose storyboards with a consistent character, and I want to try those in a different visual style. Like I want to help sell my screenplay. You know, maybe I'm good at writing, but I'm not a, you know, great illustrator. And yes, I will, you know, collaborate with real human illustrators to do the final thing. But for right now, I just kind of like want to rough out the story I'm telling. You know, maybe we can give people tools that give you that superpower. And it's not at the expense of like a traditional storyboard artist. It's just something that just wouldn't have existed otherwise. Anyway, I don't want to do all the talking. This is like a dialogue we need to have.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I realize that this is, you know, I think everybody in here realizes this is, you know, we're kind of at the precipice of this like uncharted territory. You know, there's so many questions. There's all this excitement about this technology, about what we can do with it now. I mean, in the demo the video that you showed, it talked about the storyboard ability. I draw stick figures because I suck at drawing. And so the ability to be able to take a script of mine, put it in and have it create these decent looking storyboards and previs stuff, it's like, yeah, I want that now. So it's like, whoever's working on that there at Adobe, tell them to fast track that, because there's a guy in San Diego, a bunch of us that could use that. So, but yeah, I mean, it's exciting, but at the same time, there are, like we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of fears and there's a lot of like, holy crap, this is really going to change things. And it's so unclear on how it's going to change things and where the impact that it will have. But I think the best thing that we can do is view it as what it is. I think it's just is a tool. And
yeah. And I'm looking at Mariana's comment, which is really like likening it to the pandemic, I believe, when we just had no idea what was coming. And I mean, everybody inside Adobe is also in agreement. Like, fake news has fragmented our country. Fake news will be on crack this next presidential election. And so I think with the content authenticity initiative, I mean, there's a lot of things happening, right? I mean, the government is forming initiatives around this of like, how do we even regulate this? And I know we're working with, I can't remember who we're working with, but like, can we use AI to recognize that that there's AI in this, and then AI is outsmarting the AI that's recognizing whether or not it's fake. And it is a very hard problem, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. And it's something we're very cognizant of. And I don't know as many of the specifics on the content authenticity initiative, but I know we're doing what we can in order to flag things that are misinformation in particular, as well as a lot of other things. And Mariana, do you want to talk? I guess.
Yeah, feel free to unmute and if you have a comment.
Hey guys, I'm joining from my iPad because I was doing something on my laptop and then I just got engrossed in this. So sorry that I'm just like wearing pajamas and stuff. Anyway, yeah, I don't even know if I have too much more to say besides there is a lot that needs to be I am so shocked that these conversations are not happening in the creative circles that I'm attending. Oh, here I am on video. Didn't even realize. So I feel like I'm the one that keeps bringing it up in different groups. I'm not even part of the San Diego group, so I'm a total, stowaway in this conversation. But I've been a journalist for 15 years. I've been doing documentaries for that amount of time, and I just can't help but think that nothing is going to be the same in a matter of months, and it feels like March 2020, where we're just kind of going about it and just being like, oh, these tools are so interesting. And, I don't fault Adobe for creating even more tools that are doing this. Like it's unleashed, it's happening. I accept that it's happening, but I just feel like we, as creatives, we need to be thinking about what's next. Like, how do we adapt? What is our role moving forward? What's your name? John. You said something about like, oh, these are tools that are going to make your work a lot easier, a lot faster. And sure, that'll be the case until my clients are using these tools to do it themselves, which is fine. We use tools to create GIFs now because we don't pay somebody 8 hours to do it. I totally get it, but I want to talk a lot more about what role in the creative industry we will have going forward using all these tools. That's basically what I want to talk about. I just don't feel like we're talking about it enough. And I know that like Adobe, at least you have this messaging of like supporting creatives and caring about creatives and, wanting to develop tools that we request and things, all of that. And to me, the conversation to be having right now is what does the future look like for us?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's hard to say. I mean, listen, I think that's a great topic for like a future meeting that we can hold. We'd love to have you back. Welcome. That's your first time here. But I think that's something that we as creatives need to sort of get together and talk about. How is this going to impact us? Where, it's because there's so much we don't know that it's we have to kind of see how things roll out and how it sort of plays out, and and we'll have to figure out the guardrails and all that kind of stuff as we go. And yeah, like we said, like you said, it's going to impact us. Some people are, I have clients who are going to use this technology that, that means
Replace you.
to do some of the things that I do. And you know what, that's fine. I'll figure out another way to make a buck, and to survive and to pivot off of it, but I think the opportunities from it, as the dust starts to settle, opportunities will start to show up, and we'll find the new normal. We'll find out how to, we'll find out how to survive in this, and how to pivot to make a living off of it, and how to use these tools in a way that's better than the clients. Listen, there was a period there, I do video, and there was a period back in the mid 2000s, I'll never forget, where some of my corporate clients, who I do corporate video, bought, if anybody remembers, flip cams, which were these little like cameras that kind of look like a cell phone. They shot terrible video. And they bought flip cams. And I remember one of the clients coming in wanting to pay me to come in and show them how to use the flip cams the best way possible to shoot video, so that they didn't have to pay me to come out and do it. But you know, they realized the video looked like crap. They didn't know what they were doing, and it was better to have a professional do it. And I think part of this could start to become like that, where, people need professionals to be able to use these tools in a way to get the best possible result, because clients are going to be busy doing what they do and not learning how to use these to the full extent that they can be used. So
yeah, and I'd like to hop in there too. So one thing that I heard that I thought was really like answered this question straight away, I think Karina said it like an hour ago, was when they invented typewriters, like everybody thought we were going to be working 20 hours, and now we're all like complaining on Twitter about how burned out we are and how we need to work like less than 60-hour weeks. So, I mean, I think like, trying to judge what the future is going to be based on like our fears is always like a really bad idea. But like, I would say like taking like the flip cam like another step further, like, I showed in here just a few months ago, like ways for people to hire me less. Like Mr. Horse and these expression-based systems, like there are ways to hire me less, because I am not ever, like, I live in San Diego. Like, I think most of us here, a large portion of us here, are going to live in the United States. We are never going to compete on price with anybody at all. We're going to have to compete on ideas. Like, so the way that I view it is I know After Effects, I know Cinema 4D, I know these things really well. But if the knowledge of how to put together the image is what I am competing on, then I am lost, and I am not going to win the battle. What people are, what I'm trying to position myself as is, and this is what I would consider like a good sustainable system, at least for the, for the interim, is I think we should all work to be a solution. The clients come to me because we know how to tell their story. We don't know how, like not just know how to put it together in After Effects or in Photoshop or in whatever that may be, but we know how to drive people to their business. So we're a solution beyond pressing buttons. And I think that that's where, like, that's as far as we're gonna be able to get into that conversation, I think, until things continue. But I know that, and this is going to be me, like, like waving the flag, I guess. But I mean, I truly think of all the people that could be running it, like Adobe's probably really good people to have behind it. Like I trust Adobe to do it much more than I trust Elon Musk to do it. So like, it's just one of those situations, or Jeff Bezos. I mean, I think that there is an attempt to stay into the artist world. And what, artists 500 years ago did not sit at their desks all day. They like went to churches and laid on their backs and painted stuff. So those people would be like, where's my job going? I'm going to have to stay at home all day. That's not a job. So it's going to change things. But I think that it's only going to make the role of the artist more, and this is my opinion, but it's going to make the role of the artist more potentially respected. Because all of a sudden, like, yeah, right now there's a nephew out there that can do the Photoshop thing that you're asking me to do. Like your like boss's nephew can go into Photoshop and do some stuff and it'll look whatever. But like, I will know why I'm doing it. Like, I know why we're doing it, and I know what to, hopefully as I learn more about, how to prompt, write prompts, how to build things, and then how to adjust what I'm given. I'm going to help you drive, to your business. I'm going to help you create moments for your customers. And
Yeah, I would replace the nephew with AI and it'll do a lot better job than a nephew. But to your
but
point,
we're right now, we're at the point where every time I get offered a job for under $500, there's someone saying, my nephew, do it for $50.
That's because they're behind on the AI tools that are available now to like do something similar to, obviously if it's like shooting video, we're not quite there yet, but
I'm not
everything.
concerned about the nephew. If I'm competing with the nephew, or if I'm competing with a computer, I'm doing it wrong.
I agree with you. And I would also say that, like, to your point, to reinforce your point, my sort of vision for it is that it's going to elevate the folks who are truly creative, who bring, like you said, solutions to a problem, who bring ideas. They're going to float to the very top. But in my mind, the marketplace for people who want to hire humans is also going to decrease, because AI is going to get so good that it is going to replace a lot of clients who want to save money will prefer to pay someone who knows how to operate the tools that will give them a good enough result. Clients who want to pay for a human will pay a lot more to work with that human. So it's like it will float the good folks to the very top, and they will work with people who want to pay the most to work with humans. And then everyone else who, to your point, is just pushing buttons or is just kind of doing run-of-the-mill creative work, they're going to be replaced. I don't mean to sound dramatic, but that's kind of how I think it's going to go. I mean, I already see jobs that people get paid for today that tools already do.
So
very easy.
So I think this, like I said before, this is a discussion that we can do a whole meeting about, and I think that's a worthwhile thing to do. I've got folks from Adobe here who are donating their time to present to us, and so I want to take advantage of that and pick their brains on,
Yes.
not so much the ethical side of this and how it impacts us, but more about the tool itself. Mike, I see you had your hand up, so if you want to ask a question, feel free to go ahead. And then, but I want to try to get it back more about Firefly and the Adobe tools, in our time remaining here.
So early on, the first thing you said, what do we want to know? First thing in when we came in at 5:30, and I said, I think that that there's this picture painted of edit the scene for me, and that I think that's what everybody's sort of terrified of or wants to happen or whatever. I mean, I guess we're all split on that. And I said early in the chat that I don't think that's a I don't think that's something that will really be much of a factor for me, or probably most people in my business. But I said, I think this all the time. In fact, I probably rant about this once a week, that I want to be able to type, there's a hiss in my audio, make it go away, or I have two cameras, color match them. And I just wanted to know sort of, and I thought the stuff John showed was really cool, supremely cool. I'm like taking notes, making screenshots and sending funny things to my friends. But like make my audio hiss go away and color match these two cameras. Where are we at on stuff like that?
Yeah, in terms of Premiere, that is something that okay, let me just say that if you fill out that form and stick your email in there, we're going to be showing concepts to video editors this summer and kind of just getting a stack ranking of where they are, because you saw the landscape slide, there are so many possibilities, but the idea of a co-pilot is obviously good for noobs, it's good for pros, it's good for us as a business to help keep people in the system. So it's definitely looking at high priority, not just for Premiere, but for Photoshop, Illustrator, all of the Creative Cloud apps. I think what's near term is more of a Q&A. How do I crop this video? How do I blur a scene? That stuff is like easier to do. And what you're talking about is what we call content intelligence plus this ChatGPT level of like semantic understanding of what's happening in the app. And so we do have a lot of technology in the pipeline, video tagger, audio tagger, shot type, knowing your shot type and that kind of thing. So the the long game is that you will be able to have an assistant do things for you using natural language text. I'd say knowing how quickly things go in Premiere development, it's going to be a years long rollout. But for sure. And that's a place where we really do want to sit down and talk with y'all. Cause like when I go into like the Premiere Pro Facebook group, usually it's which format, codec, blah, 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 do I need to do since I shot these two different cameras. And then obviously, you know, noobs are like, why is crop there? But yeah.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, say a couple of things. Plus one, it's totally like what people want, just to echo the request about like Hiss is, it's cool if you can make, I don't know, Elon Musk made of spaghetti dancing on the moon. It's like, whatever. But again, like
that's exactly what I meant. Like I have a friend who's into succulents, and I typed her name and then made it out of succulents and texted it to her. I was like, oh, this is so cool. I can't really see using. I don't feel like that's a thing I'll use a lot.
Probably not. No, and I just candidly, like, we're kind of in the tire kicking phase. Like the numbers are, we would grant access to folks that come in, kick the tires, get excited, share a few things, but there's like this very, very sort of quick die off. But that's okay. It's what we expected. It's like really as of yesterday is I think when we took a big step forward with the content where generative fill. Because there it's like, oh, it's actually in my tool. And literally I don't have to make up anything. I just hit go. And it's just like taking something I've known for the last 10 years and just making it way better. And so just these like kind of like surgical applications of tech are really interesting. Similarly, I did ask for permission to show the Illustrator stuff. I can't yet, but hang out a couple weeks. Some good stuff is coming. And there, you know what, on the Firefly site, we're like, oh, generate entire scene and vectorize it. And it's like, yeah, we're working on that. That's really cool. But people would frankly just love it if we like made patterns or like made brushes or just like these little augmentations or like, let me draw a napkin sketch, take a picture of it, feed that in. Now help me apply different color treatments to it, or like spatially, like can you kind of mutate the proportions in interesting ways? Can you kind of vary those things independently? Because there it's like, yeah, I have the germ of an idea, and again, if I had enough time, I could like sketch out a million of these things and iterate it, and maybe I still will. But like, I don't have time to like sit here and like, here, let me try a Conte crayon and like oil paint this one, and then do watercolor on this one. Like, just help me sort of like visualize the nucleus of an idea in ways that take it further. So yeah, this is really good feedback. It definitely affirms a lot of what we've been saying to leadership, and they get it. And to Teresa's point, now what they're asking is like, great, go take specific ideas into the field and have people evaluate what's most important. Just the last bit, I'll quote Stu Maskowitz. I remember this like 10 years ago, but he has such a great way to phrase things. I was with like Dave Simons and Dan Wilk, guys who created After Effects, and they were like thinking amazing thoughts. And he's like, guys, you're like the F1 team at Honda, which is like amazing because like, yes, like rain sensitive windshield wipers somehow come out of it for my Accord, but like I've got a minivan. Like I just need to put some milk in the back and like get the kid to soccer practice. Like it's cool, aim for the moon for sure, but like don't forget like where the actual rubber hits the road. And so yeah, that help us stay grounded in like the most relevant applications for you.
Just going to say real quick what the Mike, you asked about, removing Hiss, and Teresa posted a link to Adobe Podcast, which we've kind of talked about in past meetings, but is an amazing tool. And the day that podcast hits Premiere, will be a banner day in this edit bay over here, because I'm going to be it's game-changing kind of stuff for audio. I mean, I've used it so many times to clean up really bad audio, and the things that it does is just amazing. So yeah, I mean, Mike, when that hits Premiere, that's going to help you solve a lot of audio issues. I
don't know that audio hiss it was just something that kind of came up this week. Same with the color correct two cameras. Like I'm familiar with how to color correct two cameras. Like I can do it. It just feels like when we're talking about sort of AI taking over the world, like I'm not going to have a job next year, I better sell my house. And meanwhile, we're just like, oh, the school bell rings in the back of this interview. You know, I'm sort of painstakingly taking it out, and it just feels like school bell, interview, remove. You know, I don't know. It just was I don't know that I have particular problems with that issue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I somewhat off, so I'll let them go.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, this conversation has been super, super fruitful for me personally, but also just, you know, having worked as a creative for many years and now on the inside, quote unquote, of Adobe, you know, we really do want your feedback and all the good and bad and everything in between. That is, we have teams and teams of people that are paying attention to a lot of the things that have come up in this discussion. So just wanted to call that out. We appreciate you sharing that. And I've dropped the form in the chat. Seriously, click it. We would love to chat with you. And that's not just, you know, talking the talk. Truly, we encourage you to submit your feedback, submit your emails. We'd love to stay in conversation and not just, you know, here and, you know, when this call ends, but keeping the conversation going. So I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, everybody, if you haven't clicked on that link yet, please do it now, and then you can, you know, fill it out later. I've got it up, and as soon as we wrap up the meeting, I'm going to fill it out myself. So it's definitely something to do. Okay, well, we're at about 7:15. So I had planned on showing a little text-based editing and some other stuff in Premiere, but I think we're going to put that off till next meeting because I think we'll save that. I was going to show the tone mapping feature and some other stuff, but I think we can demo that next month. All right, everybody, with that, we will wrap up this meeting. Thank you so much for showing up. I really appreciate it. You know, you guys from Adobe, Karina, Teresa, John, thank you. I can't thank you enough. You guys did a tremendous job. You showed us so much great stuff. And, you know, I'm equally little nervous with totally excited about this. I mean, really, as a kid who grew up loving visual effects and spent a little bit of time at a visual effects place interning when I was in college, I feel like ILM is now like not that far away anymore. Somebody said, I think it was John said, the moat is getting, you know, smaller between what visual effects houses can do and what indie filmmakers can do. And I think you're dead on. I mean, you know, the reach to what ILM and Weta and what those guys can do is getting smaller. It's still not completely attainable yet, but it's getting there. And that, to me, that's kind of exciting. So, but yes, thank you all so much. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording. We'll see you all next month.